You can go to any zoo, any private place in the United States or around the world, and as soon as there's a fence, you don't have to treat them like a tiger. They're not predators anymore. They're just beautiful, interesting, and here for our enjoyment.
From the fashionable Victorian menagerie to the animal stunts we see in modern movies, exotic animals have long performed for our enjoyment and entertainment. But what happens to the animals when they can no longer perform? Many end up at sanctuaries like the Performing Animal Welfare Society, a 2,300-acre natural habitat wildlife sanctuary located near San Andreas, California. This unique facility is currently home to 9 elephants, 4 lions, 1 black leopard, 7 bears, 22 tigers, and co-founder and president Ed Stewart.
This is Kim, and she's in there with Roy and Claire. She's 15 years old, came out of a roadside zoo in New Hampshire, and was scheduled to go to the pet industry. Somebody intercepted her and brought her to us when they were just cubs. Hi. Hi. I know. You're a wonderful girl. Yeah, you're good.
PAWS provides homes for retired or mistreated animal entertainers and investigates reports of abused performing and exotic animals. Unsurprisingly, Ed has strong feelings about exotic animal ownership of any kind.
I know that there are some good facilities and some are good, some are bad, but the ultimate goal for all of these places is a little murky to me. Is it to return animals to the wild? Is it to teach people about animals? I think all of it is ineffective. In the history of the world, nobody's taken a captive tiger and put it into the wild. And with the shrinking habitat, it's never going to happen. So reintroduction is a pipe dream. It's not going to happen.
And while some may argue that captivity is a valid way of preserving a species or educating the public about conservation, others, like Ed, believe that captivity changes an animal to the extent that it is no longer anything like its ancestors.
Our mission is to give the animals that we take the best life we can give them, knowing that we can't give them a normal life. We can't give her a natural life. She's 15 years old and she has never had to catch her dinner, never had to hunt for her food. We have provided everything. You put an animal in an enclosure, whether it's a big enclosure or a small enclosure, you have totally changed their life. She's an apex predator. She would hunt almost constantly looking for enough food. She would be raising babies. She would have an incredible responsibility in the wild, and she would rely only on herself. Their natural history is so ingrained in them to perform their duties, and you take all that away in captivity. As soon as you put a fence up, you create disrespect for that animal.
It's something of a contradiction for Ed. On one hand, he's against keeping wild animals in captivity. On the other, he keeps captive animals.
We're honestly looking at these animals every day. We really want to do the best we can for them, but the best thing you can do for them is not promote it in captivity, because they're just not designed to live captive. And it's a black and white issue. So we don't look at her or him like a tiger. We look at him as an individual. They're so far removed from a real tiger in the wild. We know we have to do absolutely the best we can for them and give them the nicest place we can to live and the best vet care. But if we had a breeding pair, I would be heartsick if I was the one responsible for creating a litter of baby tigers that would have to live their whole life in a cage. You know, it's just basic freedom for a tiger to be wild.
PAWS Director of Veterinary Services, Dr. Jackie Guy, has the job of ensuring that all the animals are kept healthy. Many of the problems she sees are a direct result of captivity.
Animals in captivity, especially wild animals in captivity, can develop all sorts of problems that are unique to captivity that aren't found in wild populations. So as a captive wildlife veterinarian, I would say probably 95% of the problems that I'm seeing in my patients are related to captivity in one way or another. An example of that is this is a tiger. These are radiographs or x-rays of a tiger's spine he's an adult. He's not an old man by any means, but he's a mature adult. And he's got significant arthritis that, would not be seen in a wild tiger. This is an early onset of really severe arthritis.
And the problems Dr. Jackie sees associated with captivity are not just physical health issues.
Confinement is very hard on animals, regardless of the size of the cage. Being confined brings with it all sorts of challenges for especially formerly wild animals or wild animals. Wild animals are not domesticated. In other words, they're not used to being held captive. And so there are instincts that they have that are they're not able to express. And that leads to frustration. It leads to a lot of behavioral problems, a lot of anxiety and stress, which sometimes they'll end up pacing or tossing their heads or doing various repetitive behaviors. And we've all seen that. We've all seen a pacing bear in a cage or a tiger in a cage. That's abnormal. They don't do that in the wild. Also, a really sad thing is when an exotic animal begins to self-mutilate or damage itself, pull its hair out or pull its feathers out. And that's an unfortunate consequence of stress, of being in captivity.
Winston, one of the sanctuary's current bear residents, has only recently stopped displaying those telltale signs of captive boredom.
Captivity, it's a challenge. When you look at California mountains, that's where they should live. The Smoky Mountains, Florida, they're all over the United States. And when they're in captivity, a lot of times, they're one of the worst pacers, one of the worst at rocking their heads. They just don't have anything to do.
As former pets or performers, the animals here are accustomed to being around humans. And many involved in the exotic animal ownership debate believe that they should continue to enjoy human companionship.
Hey, girls! Mara, let go! Come on, girls, let go! Come on, Tika! What a good girl. What a good girl. Mara, let go! Come on, young lady. Good girl. I see. Oh boy. Oh boy. See their teeth, they're made for eating. You can see it in there. They're made for eating branches and hard brush and eating a very low protein, high fiber diet. We don't ever teach them tricks just to teach them a trick, but in order to check their teeth, it's good to be able to handle them a little bit. We don't go inside with them, but we do it from the outside.
Elephants can be really excellent patients. They're very intelligent, they enjoy interacting with us, and we use positive reinforcement training with our elephants, meaning they choose to participate in their own health care, and they're rewarded for that. They're never punished. And so, consequently, it's actually quite easy for me to provide veterinary care for such an intelligent species. They're very easy to work with. They voluntarily will allow me to draw blood, take x-rays, work on their feet. Even more invasive things like collecting a small biopsy, things like that. They have learned that we're not here to punish or harm them in any way, so they're actually really good patients.
But not all of Dr. Guy's patients are as cooperative as the elephants.
It can definitely be dangerous being around dangerous exotic animals, dangerous wild animals in captivity or free-ranging for anybody, including an owner of an animal, but certainly for the veterinarian. And so again, it takes somebody like myself who's had specialized training to know how to safely treat these animals, but there's always a potential for, somebody to get hurt.
And although Ed feels that captive exotics are no longer the predators they would be in the wild, even he has no doubt they remain potentially deadly.
Predators know that they're predators. They don't know why, maybe, that they're focused on vulnerable things, but they do. Somebody with crutches, somebody in a wheelchair, somebody who's lagging behind, they know, even though they don't have to. It's just part of their nature to stalk and maybe hunt.
And while many owners of exotic pets do provide for all their needs, caring for such unusual animals proves too difficult for many, and they often arrive at sanctuaries with a host of health issues.
We have right now the second oldest African elephant in the country living here. It's almost like a retirement home in some ways, especially for elephants. You know they're getting old. You know they have arthritis before they get here. Sometimes they have foot problems, toe problems, infections, or bone problems. And so you just want to give them as many good years as you can.
In a sanctuary situation, you rarely see, young, healthy animals in need of placement. They are oftentimes the product of almost what I would call a puppy mill for tigers, where they're just breeding and breeding and breeding, sometimes for photo shoots and things like that, with no regard for what happens to them after that function is complete, when the tiger is too big to handle or too big to use in public contact or films. A lot of times they're viewed as disposable, and most of them are unhealthy. They'll come to us with all sorts of issues, vision problems, crooked legs, arthritis, early kidney disease is very common. And some of those conditions are genetic. They're congenital problems that are passed on from generation to generation.
For many animal advocates, freedom is the ultimate goal. But once an animal is already in captivity, options are limited.
We do what we can, but we can't give them what they should have, and that's their total freedom. Nothing would make us happier than to release these guys to where they should be. But the fact is, they would not be able to do it. They wouldn't have a herd, they wouldn't know what to do, and they'd probably die within a few weeks or less. Okay, we gotta go. We gotta go. You can't eat this whole bucket. Our happiest times are when we see them up on the hill like this, grazing on fresh green grass. When you have a sanctuary, you live for moments where the animals are doing something that they would be doing in the wild. So if they're in a mud hole, if they're grazing, if they're pushing on a tree, if they're tearing branches off, those are all kind of rewarding times for us. But it's not a substitute for the wild.
While Ed may be able to provide the illusion of freedom to the animals in his care, he's very aware that true freedom is something they'll never know.
If any of these animals could go free, if all of them could go free, we would load them up tomorrow and take them home, take them back and let them go. And I think it's a responsibility for us to tell people the truth about captivity, at least our point of view. And if we don't win the argument, that's okay. We're not going to beat anybody over the head. But I think if you take a step back and look at captivity, it hasn't worked. It's bad for individuals. It's not helping species. So it's time to change the model. Go to the woods, go to the creek, turn over some rocks, look at the animals, teach your children respect for nature, just basic respect for nature. I think that's the starting point. And if we can't turn it around, we can't turn it around, but let's not make tigers and bears and elephants live in enclosures for the rest of their life, generation after generation after generation, for really no reason.